He had 104 wins, a 3.15 ERA, and 2 legendary no-hitters before dying mysteriously at age 29. Star pitcher Don Wilson was found lifeless in his car passenger seat, while his son lay dead directly above the garage. This is the highly tragic, unresolved story of a brilliant ace who died with the questions still wide open today. Compton, California. Donald Edward Wilson grew up attending Centennial High School, which famously produced major league players like Roy White, Reggie Smith, and Wayne Simpson. Wilson originally played infielder, only pitching to spell his older brother Willie's tired arm. He had a natural raw power that scouts couldn't ignore, and the Houston Colt 45s signed the 19-year-old right-hander in 1964. Starting in Florida's Cocoa Rookie League, he was promoted in 1965 to the Class A Cocoa Astros. Under manager Billy Goodman, Wilson threw 181 innings, going 10-8 while celebrating his daughter Denise's birth. The next season, under AA Amarillo Sonics manager Bud Hacken, Wilson went 18-6 with 197 strikeouts in 187 innings, forcing his major league call-up. On September 29, 1966, the 21-year-old made his big league debut at Crosley Field in Cincinnati, entering in the third to relieve Bob Bruce. Wilson pitched 6 strong innings, giving up just 2 runs on 5 hits and striking out 7 to secure a 3-2 victory. In his first major league appearance, he walked away with a win. By 1967, his first full season, he was a permanent starter, logging 10 wins and 9 losses with a 2.79 ERA over 184 innings. On June 18, 1967, under manager Grady Hatton, Wilson threw the first no-hitter in the history of the Houston Astrodome. It was also the first no-hitter ever thrown in a domed stadium or on artificial turf. He faced 30 Atlanta Braves batters, using a 93-mile-per-hour fastball with devastating lateral movement. He struck out 15 Braves, finishing by striking out Hank Aaron on 3 consecutive pitches. The franchise was so thrilled, they tore up his contract in the clubhouse and gave him an immediate raise. He followed that with a 29-inning scoreless streak in July, prompting Mets manager Wes Westrum to say Wilson had one of the best arms he had ever seen. He threw with absolute fury. On July 14, 1968, he set an Astros record by striking out 18 Cincinnati Reds in a single game. The fierce rivalry reached a peak on May 1, 1969. The night before, the Reds' Jim Maloney had thrown a no-hitter against Houston. Wilson was viciously angry. 9 days earlier, the Reds had humiliated Houston in a 14-0 blowout where Pete Rose aggressively took an extra base and Johnny Bench called for sliders with a massive lead. Reds manager Dave Bristol had taunted Wilson, calling him gutless. Wilson vowed revenge. On May 1st, he pitched with a massive chip on his shoulder, keeping the Reds hitless for 9 innings, striking out 13, walking 6, and hitting Johnny Bench with a pitch. When Tommy Helms popped out to end it, Wilson had his revenge no-hitter, winning 4-0. He admitted his legs were shaking so hard he had to step off the rubber. Pete Rose mocked him as Rockhead, but Wilson had his statement. By 1971, he was an all-star, posting a career-best 2.45 ERA and earning team MVP honors. Off the field, Wilson was breaking social barriers. In June 1969, he and teammate Kurt Blefari became the first regularly paired interracial roommates in National League history. They faced immediate vitriolic backlash and hate mail. Blefari, a fiery first baseman, told the critics to go to hell. Wilson quietly noted that they were just 2 human beings trying to make a living in the same game. He was a man of intense pride, which served him well on the field, but put him on a collision course with authority figures. His manager said his best 5 or 6 years were still ahead of him. He was almost right about the number, he just had the direction wrong. And the moment that captured Don Wilson, the competitor best, wasn't a win. It was a no-hitter that got taken out of his hands. By 1973, that intense emotional energy began to clash with the managers trying to control him. Legendary skipper Leo DeRocher took over the Astros, and he was a man who did not tolerate outspoken players. Their relationship was toxic. During spring training in 1973, squad splits caused player union disputes involving veterans like Larry Dierker. Wilson sat right in the middle of this rising labor friction and management hostility. On July 27, 1973, their feud finally boiled over on the team bus at the Houston airport. Wilson called DeRocher an offensive name. DeRocher immediately fined him $300 on the team bus. Wilson finished that season 11-16 as the team finished 82-80. After the season, DeRocher was out, and Preston Gomez took the reins, setting up the most controversial game of Wilson's career on September 4th, 1974. On that night, Wilson held his favorite rivals, the Cincinnati Reds, completely hitless through 8 innings. But he was wild, walking 5 batters and hitting another. In the 5th, 2 walks to George Foster and Cesar Geronimo, a sacrifice, and an error by shortstop Roger Metzger on a Pete Rose grounder allowed Cincinnati to score 2 unearned runs. Houston was losing 2-1. In the bottom of the 8th, with the no-hitter still alive, Wilson was scheduled to lead off the inning. Gomez prioritized the team win over individual history and pulled his star pitcher for a pinch hitter, Tommy Helms. The 15,840 fans erupted in boos. Helms grounded out, and Mike Cosgrove gave up a hit in the 9th, destroying the no-hitter as Houston lost anyway. Yet, Wilson backed his manager, stating that putting personal goals ahead of the team never produces a winner. 3 weeks later, on September 28, 1974, Wilson closed his season like an ace, throwing a brilliant 2-hit 5-0 shutout against the Braves. That winter, he behaved like a man who believed he had a long, bright future. He worked with the Astros Speakers Bureau alongside teammate Dave Roberts, running public relations for the team in the community. He ran a local youth pitching school with teammate Tom Griffin and predicted to the front office that he would win 20 games in 1975, stating he had never felt better. He was keeping busy in the public eye, too. On December 21st, 1974, he served as a judge for the ABC television show The Superstars. After missing a line violation by a competitor during a softball throw event, he was criticized by tennis star Billie Jean King and reporter Donna DeVerona. Annoyed by the drama, he snapped back, asking why he needed such hassle, but his focus remained on the upcoming season. He was booked to teach at that youth pitching school on Sunday, January 5th, filling in for Ken Forsch. He never made it. That was the morning Bernice Wilson walked into the garage. When police arrived at the Wilson home in southwest Houston on that cold Sunday afternoon, they walked into a scene of massive confusion. In the stylish suburban home, Christmas decorations were still hanging, including silver garland zigzagging down the banister of the winding staircase in the center of the house. Bernice Wilson answered the door wearing a green velvet robe, and paramedics immediately noticed that the left side of her face was severely swollen and bruised. In the attached garage, they found the family's brown 1972 Ford Thunderbird parked on the left side, right next to their Datsun 240Z on the right. A heavy black carbon stain was visible on the concrete floor directly beneath the tailpipe of the T-Bird, and another matching stain was baked onto the bottom edge of the overhead electric garage door. Inside, the key was turned to the start position, the gas gauge sat on empty, and the engine was cold. Wilson, a 6'3", 230-pound athlete, was reclined in the passenger seat, head tilted back, ankles crossed, hands in his lap. A cigarette pack sat on the dashboard. The driver door was closed, but the passenger door was left open. The deadly carbon monoxide gas had filled the garage and climbed up into the bedrooms directly above. In the master bedroom, 5-year-old Donald Alexander was found dead upstairs, lying on his stomach, covered to the waist by a sheet. 9-year-old Denise was found unconscious in her bedroom, barely breathing and in a deep coma. An ambulance rushed her to Texas Children's Hospital. Bernice survived and was taken to Southwest Memorial Hospital, treated for carbon monoxide inhalation and for the injury to her face. A hospital spokeswoman, Peggy Nedrift, addressed it directly. The jaw was not fractured. It was swollen, bruised, and quite painful. Don Wilson's autopsy, performed by Dr. Yosef Yahimchik, revealed a lethal carbon monoxide saturation of 68% and a blood alcohol content of 0.167%, well over the legal limit of 0.10%. But three critical things never sat right with the detectives. First, the position of the body. Wilson was 6'3" and 230 pounds, and the Thunderbird sat roughly 2 feet from the Datsun beside it. Getting into that passenger seat meant squeezing through a gap barely wide enough to open the door. Second, the injury to Bernice's face was never explained. She told police she didn't know how it happened. Later, she said she vaguely recalled falling into a wall 2 days earlier. Both statements came from a woman who had spent that night breathing the same gas that killed her husband and son, and who was hospitalized for it. Third, the timeline didn't line up. Bernice told police she and Dawn had been out with teammate Cesar Cedeno on Saturday nights. Cedeno told detectives it was Friday, January 3rd. That left Saturday night unaccounted for. On January 14th, she retained an attorney and declined further questions. The lead detective, Larry Ott, was careful about what he was and was not saying. They weren't pointing the finger at anyone, he told reporters. They wanted to tie up loose ends and clear up unanswered questions and inconsistencies. To make matters more suspicious, Bernice claimed she and Dawn had been out with star teammate Cesar Cedeno on Saturday nights. But detectives interviewed Cedeno twice, and he flatly stated they were out on Friday night, January 3rd, leaving Saturday night a complete black hole. On January 14th, Bernice hired an attorney and refused to answer any more questions. While teammates like Doug Rader fiercely rejected suicide talk, stating that he would never take his own life and that it was an accident because Wilson loved life too much, the investigation came to a grinding halt. On February 5th, 1975, the deaths were officially ruled accidental and the case was closed. Closing a case and answering it are not the same thing. And what happened after the file shut says more about baseball in 1975 than anything on the autopsy report. In 1975, Major League Baseball had absolutely nothing in place to help its players off the field. There were no employee assistance programs, no mental health networks, no substance abuse counseling, and no crisis intervention teams. Those support systems would not exist in professional baseball for years. So, when one of its brightest stars died at age 29 in a garage full of questions that homicide detectives could not honestly answer, the institution turned to the only tool it had: symbolic gesture. On April 13, 1975, the Houston Astros officially retired Don Wilson's number 40, making him only the second player in franchise history to receive that honor. That spring, the team stitched a black circular patch with a white number 40 onto the left sleeve of their iconic rainbow jerseys, wearing his memory on their arms for the entire 1975 season. While retiring a number is a genuine tribute, in this case, it was also the entire institutional response to a homicide unit called full of inconsistencies. The sport offered Wilson no support while he was alive, and it built no real reckoning after he was gone. It simply memorialized him and moved on, because moving on was the only mechanism it owned. But the human cost of this institutional silence was devastating, and it did not get a patch on a sleeve. 9-year-old Denise finally woke from her deep coma with permanent brain damage. It took weeks before she was stable enough for doctors to break the news that both her father and her 5-year-old brother were dead. A family of 5 became a family of 2 overnight. The local pitching school lost its Sunday instructor, and the passionate pitcher who had spent his winter telling everyone he would finally win 20 games got a cold bronze plaque instead of a baseball season. That is the whole story. And it's exactly what I promised you at the top. Not a solved mystery, but a measure of a sport that had no idea how to hold one. Don Wilson threw 2 no-hitters and struck out Hank Aaron to seal the first. He died with the questions open and the file closed. And baseball's answer fit on a sleeve. Scan the QR code on screen to join the rookie membership for early access to every video, priority replies to your comments, and member shoutouts on the channel. Comment below. Does a retired number count as a reckoning, or just a way to stop asking questions? Not ready for that? Subscribing is free, and there's a long list of these coming.